April 14, 7:03 p.m. Silver Lake Event Hall. I wasn't meant to be greeted with applause. I was meant to be greeted with a document left carelessly on a linen-draped table beneath crystal lights. A document that stopped me mid-step. Formal declaration of guardianship transfer. New guardian, Dana Miller. Signed by Lily Collins. Witness, Dr. Howard Reese. Filed, 6:58 p.m. Yes. My own daughter, alive, grown, working, capable, had legally transferred her parental rights to another woman. To the very woman who dismantled what was left of my family 15 years ago. Inside the ballroom, the host's voice cracked through the speakers. Please welcome the woman who has been a real mother to Lily, Dana Miller. Chairs scraped back. Guests rose, cheering as if they had rehearsed it. And Lily, my Lily, smiled while holding Dana's hand, lifting their joined arms like a victory pose. I stayed outside the doorway, half in shadow, half in disbelief, whispering into the dark. How could they do this to me? If you want to hear the whole story, hit like, subscribe, because this will not be easy. My name is Margaret Collins. I am 58 years old, though most people only see the tiredness under my eyes and the way I press my hand to my lower back when I stand up too quickly. I had been a nurse for more than 30 years, the kind who saves lives at 3 in the morning, walks out of the hospital with the sunrise in her face, and still remembers to pick up milk on the way home. I was 28 when I brought Lily home from the hospital in a taxi because her father had already decided that staying for one more drink was more important than seeing his daughter's first car ride. The driver watched me in the rearview mirror, his eyes soft, while Lily slept against my chest in that blue blanket the hospital gave us. I remember thinking, very clearly, it's just you and me now, little bird. We'll be fine. For a long time, we were. We had a rhythm, built from necessity and coffee and second-hand furniture. I worked nights on the surgical ward, slept in 2-hour pieces, and stitched the rest of our lives together with coupons and lists. Lily had food because I skipped meals. She had school trips because I volunteered for holiday shifts. She had piano lessons because I sold my engagement ring quietly, without drama, during my lunch break. There was never anything glamorous about our life. Our fridge hummed a little too loudly, the bathroom door stuck in the winter, the curtains in the living room were always slightly crooked. But the small apartment smelled of laundry powder, tomato sauce, and Lily's strawberry shampoo. On good days, I'd come home to her drawings on the table, wobbly stick figures labeled me and Mom, always holding hands. From the outside, I suppose I looked like what people politely call a single working mother doing her best. From the inside, it felt like walking a tightrope every day over a pit of unpaid bills, hoping my tired feet would land in the right place. I didn't have the luxury of collapsing. I learned how to keep going, even when my legs shook. And them? They floated in and out of our lives like people visiting a set, not a home. Friends. Boyfriends. Employers. Later, my daughters-in-laws. Dana, especially. They took and took and took, each of them certain that my time, my money, my patience were inexhaustible. Mom, can you babysit? Just for an hour, Lily would ask once she grew older, her phone already in her hand, half of her body already turned toward the door. The hour turned into 3, then 6, then an overnight stay, and still I never said no. I would hold the baby, or water the plants, or wait for a delivery that was so important, telling myself that this was what mothers did. Margaret, you're a lifesaver. Can you cover my shift tonight? A younger colleague would say, already shrugging off her uniform top. She had a date, she had tickets, she had plans. I was the one with no one waiting at home, as she put it, so it made sense to her that I could be summoned like an extra oxygen tank. Mom, can you lend us $200? We'll return it next week, Lily's husband asked the first time, with a smile that did not quite reach his eyes. Then it was 300, then 5. Just until the business stabilizes, he'd promise, tapping his phone, showing me colorful graphs that meant nothing to me. I'd transfer the money and write the amount carefully on a piece of paper I kept folded in my wallet, like a secret IOU no one intended to honor. Over the years, the request changed shape but not nature. "Mom, maybe don't wear that coat tonight, it's a little outdated," Lily said before one of Dana's charity dinners, tugging at my sleeve with a softness that felt rehearsed. I looked down at the beige coat I had bought on sale 15 years earlier, the one that had survived bus rides, rain, and hospital corridors. I nodded, hung it back in the closet, and wore a thin cardigan instead. I told myself I was being considerate, not erased. They offered nothing but expectations. My telephone rang only when something was needed. Visits happened when someone needed a sitter, a loan, a silent extra pair of hands. Gratitude came in the form of rushed, "Thanks, Mom, you're the best," tossed over their shoulder as they left. I used to think this was what love looked like from the outside, one person giving more, the others taking it as their due. I told myself that seasons change, children grow, and mothers adjust. I told myself that if I was patient enough, generous enough, useful enough, there would eventually be room for me at the table I helped pay for. I was wrong. They were not villains in a storybook. They were ordinary people having ordinary conversations, saying ordinary things that left small, precise bruises. A forgotten invitation here. A joke about my old-fashioned phone there. A sigh when I asked a simple question about their plans. Individually, the moment seemed too small to protest. Together, that was enough. It was a small moment, so small it should have floated past me like lint in sunlight. But it didn't. It stayed, settling somewhere quiet inside me, waiting for its meaning to grow. It happened last spring, on a Sunday that smelled of cut grass and the lavender hand cream I always keep in my purse. Lily and I were standing in front of the bakery on Maple Street. We had just finished lunch, something simple, soup for me, a salad for her, and she suggested taking a picture. "Just for memories," she had said. The afternoon light softened everything, the chipped blue paint on the bakery door, the fading chalkboard menu, the faint freckles that still dotted her cheeks. For a moment, I thought it was one of those gentle, ordinary days that mothers store away to revisit when the house grows too quiet. But when her friend Mia lifted the phone, Lily took a small step forward. Then she turned to me with a practiced smile and said, quietly but clearly, "Mom, for the photo, can you stand behind me? The lighting is better there." The lighting wasn't better. The sun was to our left, not behind us. The request made no sense except in the way it made perfect sense. I felt something in my chest shift, like a button pulled too hard on a worn sweater. Not enough to break, but enough to warn. I stepped behind her anyway. I even laughed softly to make it easy for her, though the sound didn't feel like mine. From the back, I could see the way she tilted her chin, the way her smile sharpened at the edges when she was aware of being watched. I used to know her expressions better than my own. That day, I realized some of them were no longer meant for me. The picture was taken. Mia handed the phone to Lily. They both admired it, heads bent together, their hair forming a curtain I was not invited behind. "It's perfect," Lily said. She didn't show it to me. She didn't ask if I wanted another one. She simply tucked the phone into her bag and started walking toward the parking lot. I followed a few steps behind, my fingers brushing the worn leather strap of my purse. I remember hearing the soft rattle of my keys, the ones with the little silver lighthouse charm Lily bought me when she was 12. "So you can always find your way home," she had said proudly. Now, the keys felt heavier than they should have. The rest of the afternoon passed as if nothing had happened. We spoke about work, about the neighbor who had adopted a new puppy, about the rising price of groceries. Ordinary topics. Safe topics. But the sentence, the soft, rehearsed, "Can you stand behind me?" echoed in the background of every exchange. For years, I had been shrinking myself for her comfort. Stepping aside. Stepping back. Not out of fear, but out of love. The kind of love that tells itself, this stage of life is just temporary. She'll grow out of it. She'll come back. But that day, the truth surfaced with startling clarity. I had begun to take up less and less space in the story of her life, and she preferred it that way. I didn't confront her. I didn't ask why. Mothers are experts in swallowing questions that have no gentle answers. Instead, I drove her home, watched her walk up the path, and told myself she was simply tired or distracted. I reached for any explanation that would soothe the sting. But explanations don't erase the moment something shifts inside you. They only delay the acknowledgement. That night, as I made tea in my small kitchen, the fridge humming its usual uneven hum, I pulled up the bakery photo myself, not from her account, but from the text Mia had sent me separately out of habit. In the picture, Lily looked radiant. Confident. Perfectly lit. I, on the other hand, was barely visible. Just a shoulder. A blur. A presence without a face. When I saw that, something inside me finally snapped, not loudly, not dramatically, but with the quiet precision of a thread breaking under long, relentless tension. A sound no one else hears, but you feel it down to the bone. I touched the edge of the printed photo on my fridge, the old one, from years ago, where Lily sat in my lap wearing a yellow raincoat, smiling as if the world was nothing but safety and certainty. My hand rested there longer than necessary, the magnet cold beneath my fingertips. That night, I lay awake listening to the soft ticking of the clock above the stove. I didn't cry. I didn't speak. I simply felt the quiet truth settling in. Something between us had shifted, and I did not know yet whether it could shift back. Later events would show me it could not. But the first crack, that tiny fracture in the glass, appeared on that sunny afternoon in front of a bakery, when my daughter asked me, without hesitation, to step behind her. After that afternoon at the bakery, the changes came quietly. Not sudden shocks, nothing loud enough to point at and say, "There, that's where she turned away from me." No. It unfolded the way hairline cracks spread across a window, slow, silent, invisible until the whole pane trembles. It began with things so small I almost convinced myself I imagined them. A missing tag, a forgotten greeting, a message left unread. Yet each one carried the same cold thread running through it. The first shift came online. For years, Lily had tagged me in every birthday post, every holiday picture, every mediocre dinner she snapped for her followers. "Mom made this," she'd write, adding small hearts, as if she were still that girl who slipped notes into my pockets saying "I love you more than cookies." Then, one day, the post simply stopped including me. She posted the bakery photo, but cropped it, cutting out everything except her own smile and the pale blue storefront. There wasn't room even for my shoulder anymore. I stared at that crop longer than I should have, the fridge humming behind me as if urging me to close the app and get on with my evening. Instead, I saved the picture to my phone, an old habit I should have abandoned. It wasn't evidence yet. But it would become evidence later. Then came the physical distance. Hugs, once easy, became stiff half-embraces. Quick taps on the arm. A polite pat on the shoulder if someone was watching. In public, she held her bag with both hands so I wouldn't reach for her. She kept half a step ahead of me when we walked, as though she feared we might somehow be mistaken for equals. But the real shift, the one that cut deeper than anything she'd posted or edited, was Dana's growing presence. Dana had entered our lives in small mentions. Dana showed me this new skincare line. Dana says I should try networking more. Dana took me out for lunch, she's so generous. At first, I nodded, assuming she was simply filling the void left by my long shifts and endless responsibilities. I didn't mind Lily building a life beyond mine. It's what mothers hope for, isn't it? But then the tone changed. She called Dana like a second mom. Once. Then twice. Then casually, as if testing the taste of it. The first time she said it, the words landed with a dull weight in my stomach. I didn't correct her. I didn't ask for clarity. I simply folded a dish towel and placed it on the counter, letting the silence stretch between us. Sometimes silence is the only shield we have. Soon, my gifts began disappearing. The sweater I bought her for Christmas? Vanished. The pearl earrings she once begged to borrow? no longer worn. The bracelet she said she'd treasure forever? I found it later in a drawer at her place, still in the box, untouched. Meanwhile, Dana's gifts, designer bags, spa weekends, gold necklaces, filled Lily's feed. She posted every one of them with long captions praising Dana's kindness, guidance, and unconditional support. Unconditional. A word I had lived by quietly for decades, without applause. I told myself that maybe Lily was simply growing, exploring, redefining herself. I tried to be gracious. I tried to be patient. I tried not to take personally 100 small erasures that felt anything but accidental. But the fractures multiplied. There was the dinner where Lily corrected my pronunciation of a wine I had no interest in drinking. There was the charity event invitation addressed to Lily Collins and guest, which she handed to me only after saying, "I already promised Dana we'd go together. But you can come if you really want." And there was the morning I arrived at her apartment with soup when she said she was feeling unwell. She opened the door in a crisp robe, Dana's robe, monogrammed, and said, "Oh, Mom, you didn't have to do that. Dana already brought me lunch, and she's coming back later." Then she stepped back only enough to take the container from my hands, not enough to let me in. That was the moment I realized the truth I had been avoiding. I was no longer her first call. I wasn't even her second. I was the afterthought, the placeholder, the one she assumed would understand without ever being explained to. Still, I didn't confront her. Still, I didn't demand anything. Still, I waited, telling myself that every family goes through seasons, that mine was simply entering a colder one. But the cold has a way of revealing what warmth once hid. And as the months unfolded, I felt the quiet certainty settle in me like frost on a window pane. A betrayal was coming. Not sudden. Not loud. But inevitable. The small cuts had already been made. All that remained was the wound that would finally make them undeniable. 3 days before Lily's 30th birthday, my phone rang while I was folding towels. The evening news muttered on the television, but I wasn't listening. Her name on the screen still did that small, foolish thing to me. It lifted my heart before I even picked up. "Hi, sweetheart," I said. She didn't waste time. "Mom, about my birthday, we're not doing anything this year. Money's tight, and I'm exhausted. So please don't plan anything, okay?" The corner of the towel slipped from my hand. For 30 years, April had meant lists and candles. "Are you sure?" I asked. "We could have a simple dinner. Just you and me." I already asked for the night off. A pause, the faint tapping of her keyboard. "No, Mom. Really. No party, no dinner. I just want it to be a normal day. Please don't make it a big deal." Her voice was soft but shut like a door. I felt that old pinch in my chest, the fear of asking for too much. "All right," I said. "No party." I swallowed. "I did get you a little something. I could drop it by." She sighed. "Can we do that later? Work is insane. I'll call you, okay?" We said our goodbyes like polite acquaintances. When the call ended, the apartment felt even smaller. The clock above the television ticked loud enough to count my breaths. On the coffee table sat a small white box from the jeweler, a silver bracelet with a delicate clasp and a charm engraved with her initials. I had paid for it in quiet installments, $10 and $20 at a time. I had pictured her face when she saw it. Instead, I slid the box into the sideboard drawer, beside spare batteries and old birthday cards she'd once made from construction paper. I told myself I'd wait for later. Later arrived that same night. Out of habit more than curiosity, I opened Instagram while my tea steeped. The app took its time, the spinning circle gave me a few seconds to hope there would be nothing new. The first picture that appeared stole the air from my lungs. A ballroom, draped in white and gold. Crystal lights throwing sharp reflections across polished floors. A caption, celebrating Lily's 30th in style. #family #gratitude. My thumb froze. Photo after photo followed. Round tables for at least 200 guests. Centerpieces of pale flowers. A 3-tiered cake iced with Happy 30th, Lily in looping gold. A live band testing microphones. A photo wall printed with her name. Indoor fireworks caught mid-flare, bright lines of light slicing the darkness. Then a video. Lily in a silver dress, laughing, spinning under the lights. Dana beside her in deep blue, one arm wrapped warmly around my daughter's waist. The camera zoomed in as the host lifted a microphone. And tonight, he declared, we especially want to thank the woman who has been more of a mother to Lily than anyone, the incredible Dana Miller. The room roared. Applause, whistles, raised glasses. Someone started chanting Dana's name. Others joined in, rhythmic and sure. I watched the screen as if it showed someone else's life. The mug in my hand trembled. I set it down before it shattered. A tag blinked at the top of the post, Silver Lake Event Hall. Underneath, a timestamp. Posted 7:01 p.m. I turned my head to look at the clock over my stove. 7:05 p.m. The party she wasn't having was happening right then, 20 minutes from my apartment. I didn't think. I reached for my keys, the ones with the little silver lighthouse charm Lily had chosen years ago, and my coat. The hallway outside my door smelled of someone's dinner. Garlic and frying onions clung to the air. My footsteps on the stairs sounded louder than usual. The drive blurred by in a stretch of traffic lights and shadow. My phone buzzed once in my bag, then again. I let it ring. I didn't want another like carefully wrapped in concern. Silver Lake Event Hall glowed at the top of a short hill, every window bright. The parking lot was almost full. Music thumped faintly through the glass doors, a steady pulse under the bursts of laughter spilling into the cool April air. From the sidewalk, I could see straight into the ballroom. Chandeliers. A sea of faces. Lily's silver dress catching the light as she threw her head back to laugh at something Dana whispered in her ear. For a moment, I simply stood there, hand on the door handle, caught between the urge to leave and the need to know just how far they had gone without me. Then I opened the door. Warm air, perfume, and the smell of overworked catering rushed toward me. No one turned. I was just another late guest in a sensible coat. Near the entrance, half hidden behind a towering floral arrangement, stood a narrow table with printed programs, a guest list on a clipboard, and a slim stack of documents held together with a metal clip. Each time the door opened behind me, a small draft lifted the top page and let it fall again. A line in bold at the top caught my eye. Formal declaration of guardianship transfer. I don't know how long I stood there, staring at that bold line on the top page. Long enough for the draft from the door to flip the corner of the paper over and back again, like a small hand waving me closer. I reached out. No one stopped me. To everyone else, I was just another guest, just another woman in a plain dress picking up a form. My fingers felt stiff as I eased the top document from the stack and read. Formal declaration of guardianship transfer. New guardian, Dana Miller. Signed by, Lily Collins. Witness, Dr. Howard Reese. Filed, 6:58 p.m. 6:58 p.m. The digital clock above the bar, reflected in the glass, now reads 7:09. So while I had been driving here, knuckles pale on the steering wheel, my daughter had been signing herself away on paper. To Dana. To the woman who had once smiled at me across a hospital corridor and said, "You have to know when to let go, Margaret." I felt the old, familiar urge to cry, to argue, to demand an explanation. It rose like heat in my chest, then stopped. There, in the doorway of that glittering room, surrounded by strangers celebrating my own erasure, something in me went very still. I placed the document back on the stack exactly as I had found it, smoothing the corner with the side of my hand. I did not storm in. I did not shout her name. I did not beg for a place in a story that was already being rewritten without me. Instead, I turned away. The hallway outside the ballroom was almost empty, the music reduced to a muffled thump through the closed doors. I walked past the restrooms, past the storage closet with its metal handle, and pushed open the side exit. Cold air met me like a clear slap. The parking lot stretched out in front of me, rows of cars under yellow lamps. To the left, near a patch of struggling shrubs, stood a metal bench bolted into the concrete. I sat down slowly, the chill of the seat seeping through my coat. For a moment, I just listened. The faint rumble of traffic from the main road. The distant laugh of someone arriving late. The muted echo of music and applause through the building's walls. Life going on, indifferent to the fact that something fundamental had just ended for me. I set my purse on my lap and opened it. Inside, beneath my keys and a packet of tissues, lay the small white box I had tucked there before leaving the apartment. Lily's birthday present. The bracelet I had bought in quiet installments, each payment a private promise. I took it out carefully, as if it were fragile. The ribbon was slightly creased. I loosened it, lifted the lid, and looked at the silver glinting in the dim light. My thumb traced the tiny engraved letters of her initials. L.C. Simple, understated. I had chosen it because I thought she might actually wear it. I sat there for a long minute, holding the open box in my hands, feeling the weight of all the years between the baby in the blue hospital blanket and the woman in the silver dress inside that hall. Then I did the smallest, most radical thing I could. I closed the box. I tied the ribbon again, slower this time, shaping the bow with deliberate care. I placed the box back into my purse, beneath my keys, letting the lighthouse charm press lightly against it. And I whispered, not in anger, not in grief, but in a voice as steady as my own heartbeat. Enough. No tears came. My face remained dry, my hands steady. What I felt was not the sharp stab of fresh hurt, but the dull, settled ache of finally seeing clearly. I had given and given until there was nothing left of me except what others needed. Somewhere along the way, my love had become a resource to be managed, redirected, signed over on paper without my consent. Sitting there on that cold bench, under the hum of a street lamp, I understood something I had spent years avoiding. They could only erase me from the parts of their lives they controlled. They could not erase me from myself. I thought of Lily at 7, burning with fever, her damp hair on my wrist as I held her in the steamy bathroom. "Don't go, Mom," she had whispered then. Now she had signed herself away from me with a steady hand. The hurt was real. But beneath it something else formed, not rage, but clarity. I could not unsign what she had signed or make her unsay what she'd said about Dana, the real mother. I could not walk back through time and fix every moment when I should have drawn a line and didn't. But I could decide what happened to me next. My phone buzzed in my purse. I let it. Whatever it was belonged to the world inside that hall. I was already outside it. I curled my fingers around the edge of the bench and breathed until my shoulders dropped. By choosing not to go back through those doors, not to beg for a place in my own erasure, I felt the outline of a boundary form. At last, I stood, pulled my coat tighter, and walked toward my car. They celebrated inside. I stepped into the dark. I kept walking. The next morning, the sky hung low and gray, the kind of muted light that makes every decision feel heavier. I woke before my alarm, long before the sun finished rising. For a few minutes, I simply lay there, listening to the familiar hum of my fridge and the soft patter of early traffic outside my window. My apartment smelled faintly of the chamomile tea I'd forgotten to finish the night before. I sat up slowly, feeling a quiet steadiness settle into my bones. Clarity, once it arrives, doesn't wait for anyone's permission. I dressed in my navy work slacks and a sweater with sleeves that had begun to thin at the elbows. I put my hair up the way I wore it for morning shifts, neat, functional, no nonsense. I wasn't going to work, but the uniform of my everyday life reminded me who I was beneath all the years of giving. Before leaving, I reached into the sideboard drawer and took out a folder I had kept without fully understanding why. I had started collecting documents over the years, small things that had unsettled me, letters addressed in handwriting that didn't match, signatures on insurance papers that looked too smooth, financial statements that showed withdrawals I never approved. At the time, I told myself they were clerical errors. Now, they were something else. I tucked the folder under my arm, slipped into my coat, and locked the door with the keys Lily had once begged me to buy a lighthouse charm for. "So you'll always find your way," she had said then. I tried not to dwell on the irony. Shaw and Partners sat on the fourth floor of a modest building downtown, its brick walls softened by vines. Inside, the air carried the faint scent of lemon polish and printed paper. The receptionist looked up when I entered. "Good morning," she said. "Do you have an appointment?" "I'm here to see Amelia Shaw," I replied. "She's expecting me." "Margaret Collins." Recognition lit her face, relief, even. "Of course. She told me to send you straight in." Amelia was the daughter of an old friend from my early nursing days. I remembered her as the little girl who used to sit under the nurse's station, braiding her mother's shoelaces while we charted patient notes. Now she stood when I entered, calm, sharp, her dark hair swept into a professional knot. "Aunt Margaret," she said gently. "Sit. Tell me everything." I set the folder on her desk. The latch clicked softly as I opened it. Inside were years of quiet unease, photocopies of insurance forms, screenshots of bank alerts, a letter addressed to me but signed in handwriting I didn't recognize, and a donation receipt tied to a charity event I'd never attended, one hosted by Dana. Amelia flipped through the papers carefully, lips pressed into a thin, focused line. When she reached the forged signature, she paused. "Did you sign this?" she asked. "No." She nodded once, sharply. "Not surprised," confirmed. She continued sorting, dates, amounts, patterns. Her pen tapped twice against the page. "Margaret," she said finally, looking directly at me. "This is fraud. Multiple counts. And the guardianship transfer they filed last night? Suspicious at best. Illegal at worst." I felt neither triumph nor fear, only a quiet acceptance. "What do we do?" "We open the case today." The firmness in her voice steadied something inside me. She stood, walked to her assistant's desk, and returned with a stack of forms and a notepad. Names, dates, accounts, signatures, all the things my life had been peppered with for years, took shape now into something clear and traceable. By late afternoon, her office buzzed with motion. Calls were made. Requests were filed. A judge issued an emergency suspension on the guardianship transfer pending investigation. The charity fund tied to Dana began its audit. Financial institutions flagged the questionable accounts for review. At 4:22 p.m., Amelia looked up from her computer. "Their accounts have been frozen," she said. "Everyone involved." I breathed out, slow and steady. A boundary, drawn not with anger but with ink and evidence. Not long after, my phone vibrated. Once. Twice. 3 times. First Lily. Then her husband. Then Dana. I let them ring through without answering. The sunlight through the office window glinted off a framed diploma on the wall, and for the first time in a long time, I saw myself reflected clearly, not as a mother scrambling to stay needed, but as a woman who finally refused to be erased. When I stepped back outside, the late afternoon light had shifted. The air tasted different, lighter, as if the boundary I set had opened a window in my own life. I didn't feel victorious. I felt correct. They had made their choices. Now I had made mine. The first call came while I was still standing at the bus stop outside Amelia's office, the folder pressed against my chest like a borrowed shield. My phone buzzed once, twice, then showed Lily's name, bright against the cracked glass. I watched it ring without moving. An older man nearby shifted his groceries from one hand to the other, the plastic bags rustling like faint applause. When the buzzing stopped, the silence felt louder. Seconds later, the message arrived. "Mom, I heard about the accounts. Can we please talk? This has all been blown out of proportion." Blown out of proportion. Not "I'm sorry." Not "help me understand." Just a neat phrase meant to shrink what she had done into something small, almost comical. An overreaction. I put the phone back in my pocket without replying. At home, the calls multiplied. Her husband first. "Margaret, what the hell are you thinking?" he demanded the moment I picked up. "My mistake. You're ruining our family. These freezes are affecting the business, the charity, everything. Drop the case. We can fix this within the family." "Our family," I repeated slowly, my gaze resting on the old photo of Lily on the shelf. "Is that the family I watched celebrating my absence last night?" A pause. Then a sharp exhale. "Dana went too far with the paperwork, okay? She was just trying to protect Lily. No one meant any harm. Don't drag strangers into this." Strangers. He meant the investigators. The auditors. The reporters beginning to circle. I let his words hang in the air. "I didn't drag anyone," I said. I opened a folder. They walked in on their own. He called me selfish, vindictive, short-sighted. I listened calmly, then ended the call when he started repeating himself. There was nothing new in his anger, it was just louder now that it had something solid to push against. Next came Dana. Her voice on the line was smooth as ever, professionally warm. "Margaret," she said, as if we'd just shared coffee that morning, "I think there's been a huge misunderstanding. Why don't we meet and clear this up? No need to involve the media. We're both reasonable women." Reasonable. I thought of all the times I had been reasonable in silence. "No," I answered. "You've handled things quietly for long enough. It's time other people see the paperwork." A beat of silence, then a new edge in her tone. "You know this will hurt Lily." "It already has," I said, and ended the call. The repercussions came quickly after that. The charity behind Lily's birthday gala announced a temporary suspension of operations, pending a financial review. Their statement was careful, but the implication was not. Board members resigned. An upcoming fundraising event was postponed indefinitely. I saw the first article online during a lunch break at the hospital, pale light from the staff room window falling across the screen. A local news site had published a short piece about irregularities in a high-profile community fund. No names yet, but the comments section buzzed, guessing. A day later, names appeared. Dana's carefully arranged public image, mentor, philanthropist, real mother to so many, began to crumble. Business partners issued distancing statements. One removed her from their website overnight, leaving an empty square where her smiling photo had been. Lily called again, this time her voice shaky. "Mom, please," she whispered, as if someone might be listening. "They're saying awful things about us. About me. Just tell them it was a misunderstanding. You can fix this." I closed my eyes, picturing her at 15, clutching my arm during a thunderstorm. "I can't fix what I didn't break," I said gently. "You signed the papers. You chose the people you trusted. Now the truth has consequences. You're choosing strangers over your own daughter," she shot back. I let the accusation land. "No," I replied. "I'm choosing the truth over pretending." For a long time all I heard was her breathing. Then the line went dead. Over the next weeks, invitations to Dana's events dried up. Photos disappeared from pages that once celebrated her. The same guests who had risen to applaud her that night suddenly had other commitments, other alliances, other causes to champion. Their loss was not my victory. It was simply the world adjusting to facts it could no longer ignore. They had built an empire on polished images, careful captions, and documents they assumed no one would examine too closely. I was not their judge, not their executioner. I was just the one who finally opened the folder and refused to look away. In the quieter hours, when the news cycle moved on to fresher scandals, the consequences settled closer to home. Apologies began to arrive, thin and panicked, dressed up as explanations. I listened to each, weighed them like coins in my palm, and put them down. Regret is not the same as repair. I let their words move past me, not into me, slow. In the weeks that followed, the noise around them grew quieter. Not because the consequences disappeared, but because people adjusted, the way they always do. Scandals peak, then settle into a new, uncomfortable normal. For them, that normal meant investigations, strained finances, awkward silences at events where they were once greeted with applause. For me, it meant something much simpler: space. I had not realized how crowded my inner life had become, how much room their expectations had taken, how much noise their needs created. With the constant requests gone, the calls reduced to distant echoes, something shifted inside my small apartment. The air felt different. Less tight. I had lived in that apartment for 15 years, but for the first time, I saw it as mine. I began with small changes. I moved the armchair closer to the window where the afternoon light was softest. I bought a new teapot, ceramic, pale blue, with a lid that clicked gently when I lifted it. I cleared a shelf that had been cluttered with Lily's old school projects and replaced them with books I had been meaning to read for years. Medical memoirs. Quiet novels. Poetry. I didn't throw away the sentimental things. I simply placed them in a wooden box, one I could open when I wanted rather than when guilt demanded it. Most days after work, I walked through the park behind my building. The path curved around a small pond where ducks gathered, and the benches were nearly always occupied by someone reading or talking softly on the phone. I liked sitting there with a thermos of tea, listening to the water push gently against the stone edge. Sometimes children ran past me laughing, and instead of feeling that familiar ache, that hollow tug of something missing, I felt something like gratitude. Their joy didn't require anything from me. One Tuesday afternoon, I passed the community clinic where I used to volunteer before life became too tangled. The windows were open, letting out the warm, familiar smell of antiseptic and cotton. A handwritten sign on the door asked for part-time help. I stood there for a long moment before going inside. The receptionist, a young man with kind eyes, looked up. "Can I help you?" "Yes," I said. "I used to volunteer here. I was wondering if you still needed hands." He brightened. "Always." Returning felt like slipping into a coat I'd forgotten fit me so well. I spent evenings sorting supplies, checking blood pressures, offering the gentle reassurance that comes after decades of caring for strangers. No one there knew about the guardianship document or the investigation or the party I wasn't invited to. They only knew my skills, my steadiness. It was enough. On Sundays, I baked bread again, something I used to do when Lily was small. The smell filled the apartment with a warmth no gift or celebration had ever managed. Sometimes I shared a loaf with my neighbor, Mrs. Hahn, who always thanked me twice and insisted on sending back a jar of homemade kimchi in return. Little rituals grew into a rhythm: tea at dawn, walks at dusk, a volunteer shift twice a week, books on my nightstand, fresh flowers from the market every other Friday. I didn't arrange these moments as distractions. They were choices, small declarations that my life did not end where others withdrew their affection. People sometimes rise when you stop kneeling. I rose slowly, gently, without spectacle. I no longer checked Lily's social media. I had unfollowed quietly, not out of spite but out of preservation. I no longer waited for invitations or apologies. I no longer kept my ringtone loud just in case. The silence was no longer something to fear, it had become a place to breathe. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the trees, I paused by my kitchen counter, resting my hand on the teapot's warm handle. My apartment glowed softly, lit by one lamp and the fading light. The peace was subtle, not triumphant, but real. I thought of Lily, not the woman who signed the document, but the girl who once fell asleep on my chest after long days, whose small hand used to fit perfectly inside mine. I would always love her. Love does not vanish because truth is inconvenient. But loving someone does not require losing yourself in the process. I opened the drawer beneath the counter. Inside lay the box with the silver bracelet. I touched it lightly, just grazing the ribbon with the tip of my finger. Not ready to give it, not ready to throw it away. Just, steady. I closed the drawer, feeling neither sadness nor urgency. Just acceptance. My life had narrowed, yes, but it had also sharpened. What remained was mine, wholly and quietly. In the dim kitchen, with the hum of the fridge steady and familiar, I understood something I had never allowed myself to consider. Peace was not something others granted. Peace was something I chose. A few weeks ago, I took an old photo of Lily from my shelf, the one where she's 5 years old, grinning with 2 missing teeth, her hair clipped back with a plastic butterfly. I held it in both hands, feeling the soft bend of the paper, and for a moment I let myself remember the sound of her small footsteps running toward me after school. Then I kissed the corner of the photo, quietly, the way I used to kiss her forehead when she pretended to be asleep. And I placed it gently in a drawer. Not out of anger. Not out of surrender. But out of peace. There are loves that expand us, and loves that hollow us out. There are families we're born into, and families life allows us to choose. What I finally understood is that love, real love, does not require erasing yourself to keep the story comfortable for others. Letting go was not betrayal. It was truth-telling. Now, my days feel steady. My mornings begin with a warm cup held between my palms. My evenings end with a quiet lamp and a book resting open on the last page I reached. I speak softly, walk lightly, and no longer wait for footsteps that may never return. If Lily finds her way back someday, I will listen. But I will meet her as the woman I am now, whole, standing, no longer bending myself into shapes that fit someone else's narrative. And if she never returns, I will still be all right. Because peace is something we build, one honest decision at a time. If this touched a nerve, you belong here. Subscribe to hear truths where silence becomes strength.